Okay, so if I'm counting this correctly, this should be part 5 of the Schumacher CAT 3000 rebuild restoration series. So we have the some of the rear assembly done here with the lower rear gear case and the rear suspension arms and so forth, motor mount, steering rack, and the front lower gear case. The next piece of this puzzle here is the front suspension arms and hinge pin brace and all that. So we're going to complete this section here, and let's see, if there's enough time we'll get to the diffs, but I have some other stuff to do tonight, so I think we're just going to try to work through this piece here. So this is I covered this in part 4, I think, how there's like 2 holes here. I think what I'm going to end up doing is just using the outer hole. I don't know why the inner hole's there. Maybe like the SST touring car variant that was around at this time, maybe that had 2 holes on the caster block. I have no idea. No idea why this has 2 holes, because every piece of information I've looked for on the caster box for the CAT 3000. Oh, I see. I gotta undo that. I can't find a 2-hole caster block, even though there are actual new and packaged parts that have 2 holes. Alright, so it looks like I need a .05, which I do have. Not a very good one. Let's see, hopefully good enough. Yeah, we can get it in there. No. That one's kind of worn out. Okay, so that means... let's get my... let's see, so... before I do that, let's put the right one back in. It's a 2mm. Okay. This one. There we go. Alright, that should slot right out. There we go. Perfect. Come on. Alright, so this arm, I don't know, I mean, it looks well done. I don't know if that hole is an original hole. I'm not completely convinced that it is. So what I'm going to do is also what happens is when you drill another hole like that, it weakens the arm structurally for this section here. So if I'm going to use the outer hole here on this, I want as strong of an arm as I can get. So I'm going to use another set of front arms for this. I'll hang on to these arms, of course, in case I need spares or something, but for now I'm just going to put them aside. Alright, we got this guy, and then we'll do the same here. That little grub screw out. Come on. I hate when it happens sometimes when you're trying to take a screw out. Gets stuck to the hex head. Alright, I think that's the only time I'll need this .05, so I'm going to put this back. So normally when I'm building things, I have a Huddy set of hex drivers. They were very expensive, considering what you get. So I have like the metric and the standard Huddy hex drivers, and they're good. But I notice the hex heads do wear. Like if I use my 2mm quite a lot, and in the past when I was running associated stuff, I used the 1/16 a lot, and the 3/32 a lot. So especially like the 1/16 and the 2mm, they wore down a lot. So, you know, you have to get a new hex tip. And those weren't too expensive. I think they're maybe 10 or 15 bucks. But I did go through a fair amount of them. And then I've tried to play around with different manufacturers. I have an MIP 2mm driver, it's just a single unit. That one's actually really nice, and the hex head is still pretty sharp. This here is some Turnigy. You know, a number of manufacturers make this exact same thing, but they charge more because they put their brand name on it. But it's the same part, and you can get these from Hobby King, and it has, you know, a little thing on the back here. So this does metric and standard hex tips, and with the exception of the .05, which does seem to wear pretty quickly, all the other hex tips are actually really good. I've been using this for, gosh, maybe 2 or 3 years at least, and it works great. It works perfectly fine. No complaints whatsoever. And this whole thing is, gosh, under $20. It's a bargain. It's a bargain. Alright. So we're going to put these front arms just away for now. Let's see, where are, I think there are other front arms in here. So these are, well, that's another interesting thing. Yeah, so it looks like the previous owner, you can tell here, normally the front arms for a four-wheel drive buggy, they have this little sort of lip or a piece here that connects the front two sections of the arm. Here they were cut off. So it looks like at least one arm was hacked there, and then, you know, these two holes here, those may or may not be hacks. Oh wait, look at that. Oh, I see. Now those were taken out of the package. Okay. These are original front wishbones, and I see they only have one hole. These were taken out of the package. They have two holes, but potentially that second hole was drilled. I don't know for sure. Not 100% sure. Let's see, some towers. And there's this guy. This also has the second hole. Okay, but again, this is from an opened package. So this is the only one that's completely sealed and it has one hole there. Alright, these are rear arms. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like alright. It's kind of interesting. So I'm going to have to see if I can find more sets of front arms. I mean, I'll use these for now. But it does look like, yeah, it says here, modified. I assume modified for that hole. But why? Why would you need that? I don't know. Seems like a waste of arms, unfortunately. But I have another set of spare parts for the 3000 coming in the not too distant future. So I guess I'm not too worried about not having enough front arms with just one hole there. I'll have to think more about, like, geometrically, let's put that aside for a minute, why you would want to use this hole here. Even that looks like it, was that drilled out? No. No, because again, there are other parts that came like that. Where are we looking here? These guys. Steering knuckles. I call them hub carriers, but they're not. Okay, so we're going to use these alloy caster blocks, they only have one hole. They're a little cleaner. They look brand new. Let's put these aside. Do they have... Okay. So those are left and right. They're not asymmetric, as are these. Looks like this was trimmed down on purpose, maybe to get a bit more free movement there during suspension travel. It's very possible. So we're going to take this out. And that has a washer. Is it? What is that? What is this? Looks like a, I don't know. It's very thin and flexible, so I can't imagine it's important. Alright. Let's put all that aside. I'll take this off. That off. Yeah, so the way with the CAT, I think the 2000s also like this. This doesn't just like slide out. The knuckle has kind of like an extension here that goes into this top hole, and it kind of sort of locks it in place, but not really. So you have to actually slide it out from the bottom. See, there's this slot here, and this will slide out, and then this will come out. Okay, and there you go. So, quick inspection. These universals are actually in pretty nice shape. No need to really change much there. The blade is in good shape, and the steering knuckle itself is also in good shape. Spins freely, so the bearings are fine. Though I might want to take this apart anyway and just re-oil the bearings, just to be on the safe side here. So the way that, because these hexes here, the way they mount onto the Schumacher wheel axles for these older CATs, and it's the same thing with the Kyosho lasers. It's like a press style, and to get them out I just take a flathead screwdriver and I just try to make a gap here and just poke it out. If I can't get a flathead in there, I might use like a knife or something, and it might be useful to wear a glove so I don't impale myself if I have to get rough with this thing. It does happen sometimes. Oh, there we go. See, it just pops right out. Alright. See that? So basically, this opening here, it's not completely flat, it's slightly tapered, and that mates up against this wheel axle, which as you can see is slightly tapered, and that is intentional. Wow, that's actually pretty nicely oiled. I can't oil that one. Maybe clean this out a little bit. It's not too bad. I have a feeling that by the time I'm done building this, if I use enough nice parts, I'm going to be afraid to run it. That has happened to me on more than one occasion, where I'll put time into building and restoring something, and especially like if it's vintage, of course, and I just get too hesitant to run it because it looks so nice now. It's like, well, why would I want to run it? You know, put it on a shelf or something. But they're meant to be run. Let's see. Alright, so let's make sure we got this part here done right. So steering knuckle Starts off on the inside hole with one 1.6 nylon washer. So that looks like a 2 on 1.6. I could be wrong. That's a 2. Alright. So I will have to change that. But while we're at it, let me also check the universal part of this, since it's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Okay. Let's see, what I'm looking for is a little bit of information on how the hex goes in, because there's this spacer here. I think that does go, yes, it goes on with the wheel. I don't know why they would do that, but okay, sure, fine. So let me put that back on, and this back on. And what happens is when you, as you can see, this wheel hex now, it spins freely. It's not actually mated to the wheel axle. When you put the wheel on and you crank it down, the lock nut, it'll push the wheel against that hex, and it'll push that against the wheel axle, and they'll press together. And then you can unlock and, you know, take the nut off, take the wheel off, and then this hex will be nice and tight and snug against the wheel axle. Yeah, see this? Different. I think that one's also a 2mm. So we gotta get the 1.6. Oh, right. That one's kind of stripped. Always fun. Go. Alright, so I put that there. And then we go to that bag that had all those little washers in them. This guy. Alright, let's see what we have here. We have a few 1.6s. Maybe this. That doesn't look like a 1.6. That looks like a 1. It's less than 1. That's like a 0.8. Okay. Is this a 1.6? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this really is a 1.6. Let's see. It is, okay. I at least want to get matching colors. This one's white and one's black. So let's do another black one, because that matches with the black plastic. Alright. So we can put this back on. Yeah, okay, so that's an Ackerman option on this steering knuckle. And by the way, for the YZ10, they did make a similar steering knuckle. It was actually made for the YR4. They used that other hole option. And I think, if I remember correctly, so you pull that one back, so it's supposed to give you, I believe it gives you more Ackerman. By using this hole rather than this one. Okay. So you can get, you know, if you can find them, just YR4 steering knuckles, and then install those on your YZ10, and you'll be all good. If you want to use that hole. I think I tried doing that once. But there were some clearance issues at full steering lock, I think. I don't quite remember. It wasn't quite as simple as just using that hole. Or maybe because like I was fastening the ball stud with a lock nut just like here, and then that lock nut at full droop, that can actually get caught against the suspension arm and limit how much steering throw you can get. So if you use this outer hole here and use the same fastening style, then that, depending on the geometry, this can actually hit the arm sooner and actually limit your total steering throw. I think that was a problem I had on the YZ10 variant of this, or the YR4 variant of that. Okay, so now that we have this also was in good shape, but let's just change this washer here. Yeah, I think there'll be just enough time for these front arms here, and then I'll have to end it after this because it is getting late and I do have to go to bed. Usually when I do get a chance to do these videos, as I have mentioned before, is after everyone goes to sleep. So that's like, 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I can be up until late doing this stuff. It's really the only time I have when I have kids to work on my toys. There are a few exceptions to that rule, but they're not too common. Alright, it's a little dirtier, but still not bad. Alright, see if I can pop that bearing out of there. By the way, this universal joint, not too bad. Teeny bit of play, but all things considered, that's still quite good. Alright, take this guy. Let's see if I can get you. There we go. Whoa, what happened there? Alright. Yeah, no washer in there. Okay. It's fine. What's that thing even doing? AA 5x9x3. So I got two different bearing sizes on this one, which doesn't seem quite right. 5x9. Okay, so I did the same thing. You know what? That's strange. Because it looks like when I'm looking here, that bearing is a bit bigger than this bearing. So even though this tells you A and A for the bearing style, 5x9x3, in this actual steering block, doesn't quite look like that. It's peculiar. Maybe they updated it, or maybe because, yeah, it's very peculiar. That's a 5x10x4, and that's a 5x9x3. Alright. See, and that doesn't really... strange. Alright. A little bit of lint there. Okay. That's pretty good. Put this back on, put this back on. Just make sure there are no shims needed for the drive shafts. I could look at the blow-up drawing, but it's better to look at the actual manual. Yeah, see here, it assumes the CVDs are already in, while here, it doesn't even show that. It doesn't show it there. In the blow-up drawing. There's some stuff here that's kind of out of... Oh, I see. You just throw it right in there. Interesting. Yeah, maybe because this is wider. See, on a lot of four-wheel drive buggies, this is actually a neat little detail. On pretty much every other four-wheel drive buggy I've had, when you need, if you want to remove the CVA or the CVD, you have to detach the steering knuckle from the caster block, because the opening here isn't large enough to fit this universal joint through this opening. And it looks like, let's just do a little test fit here. It looks like Schumacher wanted to get around that this time by making this opening large enough. Nope. Okay. So, yeah, I'm still right. So all that really means is, once again, the manual made a mistake. At least that's what it looks like. This is not a very good manual. You see, on this step here, it's assumed that the drive shafts are already installed, and that's page 9, right? So then what precedes page 9 is page 8, where you're just installing the diffs and the top deck. And by the way, I don't think they have anything before page 8 that shows you how to build the diffs. And then here on page 7, you're just building the arms, caster blocks, right, steering knuckle assembly. There's nothing in here about telling you to install the universal joint before you install the caster block. So when you get to page 9, you're going to realize that, then have to tear some of this apart and then put, the universal joint in there. So having some experience, especially for this manual, helps. That's for sure. You would almost think that someone from Team Associated wrote this thing. Alright, so now this is the left side, so yeah, these are angled. So on the left side, it's going to go in like this, which means we want caster to be this way. So when the arm is level, let's see, probably like this. Yeah, so this would be the left side caster block. So now to put it in, you have to put top piece in first, and then that'll slot in. And then, so we have, right, bottom kingpin. You want to try to avoid taking apart the steering knuckle and caster block assembly as much as possible, because what can happen, what will eventually happen, is that you'll strip the plastic on the parts of the caster block where the kingpins mount, and then they'll back out while you're running the car, and then this thing will flop around, and then you lose your race. But even more importantly than that, for these vintage cars, you have to get a new caster block. So if you're trying to preserve your parts, it would benefit you to run a reliable drive shaft so that you don't have to take this thing out and replace it or anything like that, if you can manage to do so. So CVDs are more reliable than universal joints generally, They're just made of, I don't know exactly why, but at least I've noticed, like with the Yokohama YZ10, those universal joints, unless you get them made out of like the super hard material, they do wear for sure. I don't know how these are going to do. I guess time will tell. Let's see. So we put that in there. It's a shoulder screw. Yeah, okay, so there's nothing about these silly little shims here going in. So I don't know why. I mean, maybe it's just a shim against the bottom here, which is not a bad idea. Maybe to avoid scratching the caster block, but yeah, over time I can definitely see, this kingpin nut here scraping against the caster block and removing the anodizing that's under it, because there's going to be just a little bit of friction there. It's just things moving back and forth, and dirt is getting in whatever gap there is there. So maybe that's why the previous owner put these tiny little shims between this nut head and the caster block, maybe to help it just a little bit, but I don't know. It's not in the build manual, so as much as the build manual does have its issues, I'd have to assume that if they don't have it in there, then I don't need to do it. Okay, so we got these guys. Now, just gotta plop these on the arms. No problem. These here. Let's put that there. That there. So the ball studs go on the... Ooh, I see. Ball studs go on the front of the arm, so if that's the right arm, we're going to want to do it this way, like so. And then put this in there. I see. Is that what he did? Yeah, you know what? Maybe that's what he did. Ooh, that would be tricky. Yep. So you see there's a little bit of a gap there. Oh, right. He didn't mount it there. He mounted it here. I see. Yes, if you're going to mount it on these inside holes here, you're going to need extra spacers. Ooh, that's a nasty hole. I'm going to guess that that was custom drilled. Look at that mess. Yeah, that was definitely a custom job. So I don't even know if that's like the correct angle to try to replicate, what shows up on the plastic parts that do have those two holes. But that's certainly a mess. I'm not going near those. So put them there. All right. Things you discover. This guy. Yeah, now you will note that, okay, so he did put, I don't know if this was by design on the shaft, which it does not appear to be, so it looks like this was shaved out on purpose to accept that grub screw to go into, you know, that goes into this hole here to help hold the hinge pin down. But we don't need to worry about that because we're not using that. So it does look like the previous person, you know, modified this for, presumably because they were trying to be tricky. Okay, so we're going to mount this onto the outer hole. And then those O-rings, yeah, alright. So I don't know how big they're supposed to be. There's an O-ring that goes here between, on this shaft, between the steering setup and the arm. The CAT 2000 has that as well. It's supposed to help with impacts. Right, if you crash something in the front, that O-ring will absorb at least some of the impact of the crash. Give you a little bit more margin before the arm snaps. These arms do look fragile, right? The material here is pretty thin. So this is not the kind of car I would want to drive super hard and end up smashing it into things. But what's good about the CAT is that at least on the CAT 2000, and I'd imagine the 3000 is very similar, is that it's so naturally good as far as how it drives. You don't have to drive it hard. It's just a naturally quick car. So you can actually like drive slow or easy and you'll still be very fast with it. The only other car I've ever had that experience with was the TLR, the low C 22.4. I never owned a XX4, but I assume it's very similar to the 22.4. And that was also like a naturally really good car. I guess we'll use these. But is that even the correct size? Well, yeah, let's use it. I'd imagine there's a thicker red O-ring that you might actually need to use than this. Do I have that somewhere? I do have other Schumacher parts. Alright, you know what? Let's see, hold on. Oh man, my knuckles are killing me. My right hand, all these knuckles here. Very painful. All this screwing with your bare hands, and then dealing with diaper duties. It really takes its toll on your hands. It just destroys my hands. Okay, that's all drivetrain stuff. Alright. So not there. Let me actually check as a reference. If I can't be 100% sure. Oops. CAT 2000 here. Yes, there is one fat O-ring, and I think on this side, because I didn't have a fat one, I just used two standard small ones. So normally you should have that fat O-ring there. Let me check the EC. This one I built more recently. Here I believe I just got away with a standard size O-ring, but as you can see there's a little bit more play there. Okay. So, yeah, if I can find some of those fatter O-rings, let's check all my parts here. As you can see, I have a lot of parts. Alright, I'm going to check a few things at a time. Do I see any O-rings in here? I do not. No. Okay, so not there. And I know they're not under here. It's all CAT arms. Okay. It looks like the CAT 2000 arms and the CAT 3000 arms are certainly very different. So you can't just... That's one part that's not interchangeable. Ooh, look at that. Jackpot. See? And you know what? I'm probably going to need these shocks later as well. Says that one has low-C shocks on it, which I'm sure they're great, but I'd like to do an all Schumacher build here. Okay. As luck would have it. By the way, let me just check in here. I don't think I... Oh, you know what? Oh yeah, that one was sliced down. So there were some O-rings, but that guy cut the O-ring in half down the middle. So I guess we're not using that. Alright. He dyed... What were these, yellow or white? Looks like they were white ball cups. Didn't even dye them, he painted them. Gosh, what a slob. Alright, so we're going to put these on like this. Like this. And the arms. Alright, this